we're making Pinot Grigio.
I'm Greg.
I'm Julie, and we're the Crafty Winers.
So this is not one of our favorites. We were just discussing.
This and Sauvignon Blanc both can be slightly higher in acidity than I prefer, but a lot of people like it, so I'll still drink it.
Yeah, well, no wine goes to waste in this house. I had a hard time finding grape juice. So this came in a small kit.
I forgot it came from a kit.
This is a concentrate that will make a gallon. And they give you bentonite and potassiums and tretosand. So, they give you a lot of stuff, actually, for the price. I got it. It was basically being cleared out on Amazon. So it was not very much money at all. But you may have different results.
Or not be able to get it if it's being cleared out.
Well, I think it was just because it was getting towards the end of the semester.
I see. Gotcha. Oh, did that say it came from Italy?
Did say it.
Okay.
But I paid less for this. We're Amazon associates. We're not supposed to give prices for Amazon stuff because it's against the policy. But I paid less for this than I do for most of our concentrates. I'll just say that. And got the whole kit with it. So, of course, we're not going to use their chemicals and stuff. We have our own. But that'll be saved in case we run out of something. Right? The stash of
You never know.
wine kit additives.
Emergency stash. I did do a little bit of reading about Pinot Grigio. It actually originated in France, but it quickly became very popular in Switzerland, apparently with the emperor, and then eventually moved to Italy, where I think it's really popular in northern Italy currently, which is interesting.
Cold?
Chilled. Yeah. I don't think it's cold, probably not like I would chill it in the fridge, but maybe like 55, 60 degrees.
Sitting above that with white wine and some of the European countries that haven't had refrigeration.
It's kind of, it goes really well with fish. So I guess that makes sense in Italy. At first I was thinking it was kind of weird because I wouldn't drink white wine with pasta. But I thought it was kind of funny. The name, I'm just reading it right here. The name Pinot Grigio roughly translates to gray pine cone.
Seems more descriptive of some IPAs I've tasted.
That's in Italian. Pine cone in Italian. So, anyway, I'm not sure how those things describe this wine. It's not gray, and it doesn't taste like a pine cone. But
it's not gray yet.
There you go. That's my knowledge on Pinot Grigio.
So, first thing we're going to do is put in the concentrate. First thing we're going to do is get the container open.
Good job.
Don't twist. You pull.
You want me to do it?
I'll hold the
You
container.
look dangerous here. Let's go.
And the corgis are hoping that we spill some.
I'm going to try not to.
Corgis.
Corgis? Are you down there?
So now we want to add water to the 96 ounce, just 3/4.
See how far this bottle.
Okay, so now I'm going to mix it up real good.
And for those of you who are going, what the heck right now? We're not really just drilling the wine. This is I don't even know what they call it.
Pumpkin gutter.
It's a pumpkin gutter. That's what I bought it for originally, and I got 10 of them, and we have now found lots of great uses for them. Stirring paint and mixing wine.
So we are getting our specific gravity reading on this 75% full. We're adding water to a concentrate, so as we add water, the sugar level is going to go down. But we're using our nifty little calculator on craftywiners.com/tools.
That I'm going to get to right now.
That she's going to be able to plug figures into, and it's going to tell us how much sugar that we want to add based on the reading now and what ABV we want. Which we don't know what we want. I think we want 11%. That's what we discussed. And the reason we are shooting for 11% is that this Premier Blanc Red Star yeast, we've had go ultra dry most of the times that we use it. So it'll go down to way below 1.000. And at that point, if you aren't shooting for a lower ABV, you're going to get a much higher ABV than what you want. And we don't like white wine that is too strong. It's not like our Merlots that we like at 15%. We'd rather a white wine be at 13 or less.
Well, the white wines, when they're that high, when they're like 15, they have a real alcohol
Yeah.
taste to them.
You can definitely taste the alcohol. I'd rather know the alcohol is there and feel it a little bit, but not necessarily taste it. Okay, so this is 1.116.
Okay.
So she'll plug that ABV in, and she's going to
And then we want 11.
the 11% ABV. She plugged in the specific gravity that it is now at 75%. She put 11% for the ABV that we want. And then she changes the 1 gallon to be 75% full instead of 100% full. And it tells us something in the yellow.
It says there's already too much sugar. 1.28 ounces.
So honestly, what we would do there is we could put a little bit too much water in to make it even out. So basically it's saying that the grape juice itself already has too much sugar in it to hit 11%. And probably the reason why is because Wine Expert probably added sugar to it already.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a kit and they want you to not really have to think about anything. So what we will do is just roll with that. So we're not adding any sugar to this. She's going to make a note on the batch note saying that we are not adding sugar because it was already going to be 11.5% ABV. And then in a minute here, as soon as we fill up to a gallon and I mix it again, we will get the initial gravity. If you don't understand these terms, we have a video on hydrometers and gravities that you can watch that will teach you what we're talking about. But basically the hydrometer allows us to know how much sugar is in the must. And also, if you spin it around, you can see what the potential is if all of the sugar fermented into alcohol, what the potential ABV is. However, all rules are off. If you go below 1.000, you'll end up with more alcohol than what this says. So,
Yeah.
and that's been our experience
It's
with.
kind of been a trend lately.
Okay, so let's add water to 128, and I will mix it up again really well. It's fine to introduce oxygen at this point. It's good for the yeast. So don't worry about oxygen. However, later you're going to want to watch that after it's fermented. It is hard going back to mixing manually with a spoon after you've used one of these. It's just too easy. Okay, so now we're going to do the specific gravity again, but this time we're not having to make any adjustments.
Wine Kit made it too easy for us.
I don't know for a fact that they put sugar in it. It could be the way the grapes came, but it makes sense that they'd add a little sugar to get the ABV to where they think it needs to be. So our initial gravity is 1.088.
That's exactly what the calculator said.
Go figure. I am not going to dump this back in there because we are going to put it in here so that we can add an ingredient to it and mix it up.
He always really wants to dump it back in there.
I do. And I'm going to get this out of the way. I put those in our bucket of sanitizer. Everything that we're using tonight's been sanitized. It's in the sanitizer, so it's ready for our next video. We will be starting right after we finish this one.
And so I'm going to put in half a teaspoon of Pectic enzyme in here and mix it up. Okay, so I mixed up my peptic enzyme pretty good. I'm going to pour it back in here, and then he's going to mix it up even better with the pumpkin gutter.
So we're going to do something that I don't think we've done on camera before. We're going to test the TA, or total acid, that's in this. To test the TA, you use sodium hydroxide that is diluted to 0.2 N, which is normality. And we keep adding this very, very small amounts until the pH is 8.2. And you take the amount of sodium hydroxide that you added, and because of the dilution of 0.2 normal of the sodium hydroxide, that will give you the percent of total acid that's in here. There is a range that we want the white wine to be in, and we're doing this before we check pH. pH and TA are usually very closely associated, although they're inverse. So pH, the more acid, the lower the number, and TA, the more acid, the higher the number. So it can kind of get confusing. But if you're going to worry about acid, you're better off to worry about pH. It's more important than the TA. But that's why we haven't had it in our videos until now. We weren't really concerned about it. But we're going to show in a couple of our videos that we're doing today, we were prepared to show you the TA testing. We will do a video just on TA and probably an update of the pH testing video that we've done already. But so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what we do. But I'm getting 15 milliliters of the wine must.
Welcome to our laboratory.
This is going to waste. You do not put this wine back in the container because sodium hydroxide, and be very careful with this stuff. It's somewhat dangerous. If you touch your skin, you need to wash it off. Don't get it in your eyes, God forbid. It's diluted to the point where it's not as dangerous as the form that it came to us in from Amazon, but it's still dangerous. So this is a 20 milliliter syringe. I moved to a 10 milliliter because it's a lot more precise as it needs to be. I'm going to put 10 milliliters of sodium hydroxide in this syringe. I feel like a doctor.
You feel like a doctor? Did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night?
Slept very well last night. Does that count?
I guess.
So I've got 10 milliliters or 10 cc's if you want to talk more like a doctor.
There you go.
And I'm going to add about 4 into this because I know that my acidity is going to be at least that. So I'm going down to the 6th level.
We'll just call you Dr. Greg.
Dr. Greg, sir.
Oh, wow. Now you're pushing it.
Okay, my pH tester has been calibrated. That's important to have an accurate pH tester. And I'm going to swirl it around in here. And I'm looking for 8.2. Exactly 8.2 is what I want. Stir this with my pH tester. Right now it's 6.02, so I'm going to add another milliliter. Go down to 5. Scared me for a second, but it was because it was not stirred up. So when you get in the range of 8, you slow down and don't add a full milliliter, but I actually still overshot this. It'll give us an idea of our total acidity. Yeah, I overshot this. I should have just done half. It's not way overshot. It's so our pH right now is 8.5, and 8.2 is where we wanted to stop. So, but I can tell now from the number of cc's that I put in, which is I put 5 cc's total in, and I started with 10, and it's right now there's 5 still in here. So that makes the TA approximately, because again I overshot it a little by going to 8.4 instead of 8.2, but it's going to be pretty close to 0.5% TA, otherwise known as 5 grams per liter of acid. So this tells me how much acid is in this must. pH, on the other hand, is how concentrated, how strong the acid that's in here is. So those are two different measurements. But I can now put this unused sodium hydroxide back for next time. Again, be very careful with this stuff. So what do we do with this information?
Yes, what do we do with this information?
White wine should be between 6 and 9 grams per liter of acid. So 5 is low. So we're going to take that into account when we check our pH. I'm thinking the pH is going to be high in this case, meaning that it also shows that we need to add some acid. So we would normally test this again after we make any additions. We're not going to do that on camera. It's good to start your fermentation with, at least for white wine, 6 grams per liter of acid in the form of tartaric acid, because this is wine. So again, we're going to take our pH, and then we will make a decision from there what acid, if any, we're going to add. I'm going to get this stuff out of the way, though, before I rub my eyes with it or something. Okay, so now we are going to test our pH. And again, I'm expecting it to be a little high, which means that there isn't much acid, relatively speaking. So our pH is 3.12, which is a lot lower than I was expecting. Again, probably because Wine Expert does something to it to try to make it closer to where it needs to be. Although I wouldn't try to start a fermentation at 3.12.
No.
So we're going to want to raise it about a point, make it about 4. Yeast likes pH between 4 and 6. In the first several days of fermentation, it will drop a lot already. So at 4.2 is about as low as I'd want to start this. So watch our pH video if you want information on pH. We're not going to get bogged down with pH testing, although it's very easy to do. Get
Yes,
bogged down,
is.
I mean. So we'll let you know what pH we ended up at.
So we added 1 1/4 teaspoon of potassium bicarbonate to get the pH up to, we ended up at 4.24.
Yeah, you may need more or less. You should use a pH meter. Don't just exactly copy us, because your must may be different. Of course, if it's Wine Expert,
It might be the same.
it might be the same. So we took out about a 1/4 cup of must from here, warmed it up in the microwave for about 7 seconds to get it up to high 80s. That's going to do a couple things. For one, it makes this GoFerm dissolve a little bit easier, but you also want it to be about that temperature for pitching the yeast, which means putting the yeast into it. While she is preparing the GoFerm, 2 teaspoons of GoFerm, I'm going to transfer this into our carboy, where it's going to live for a while.
Got that nice and stirred up. And I'm going to add a packet of it's Red Star Premier Blanc yeast. And then I'm going to dunk it gently.
She's not stirring it. She's just making sure that it gets wet
And sticks to my spoon.
and sticks to the spoon. That's part of the yeast deal.
Well,
That's a lot.
I know, it stuck more than normal. What the heck?
That's clingy yeast.
Shit, I don't know how to get it off
Yeah,
of there.
just use it to...
It's just going to stick to this now.
You don't need to use a full packet of yeast, so it's okay to lose a little.
We're going to lose a little.
This is good for up to 5, even 6 gallons. And this is only a gallon, so she doesn't need to...
Okay, we'll
We
call
don't
that,
need to fret too much.
call that good.
I'm going to grab a blow-off tube. So for 2 hours, this is going to sit next to a heater to get it nice and started and bubbly and happy. And then we're going to add that into this. We're not going to show that on camera because we have more videos to record tonight.
And it has to sit for 2 hours.
So that's the only thing we're not going to be showing you is actually pouring this into the carboy. But this is a blow off tube. It's not really necessary with a white wine, but just to be consistent, we use it for every wine that we start for the first few days. So I use a twist tie to make sure that this doesn't pop out. The other end of this goes into our bucket of sanitizer, and that forms an airlock. It takes a very strong bug to crawl through the sanitizer and up this tube to get into our wine, so it's probably not going to happen. But this lets carbon dioxide come up through the tube and bubble out the sanitizer, so it's a good form of an airlock. So again, 2 hours from now, we'll put this in here. This is a white wine. We're going to want to keep it fermenting at around 65 or less degrees, between 55 and 65 if possible. On the 6th day, I'm going to degas this either by stirring, or in our case, we're going to use a food saver. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of Fermento, and I will oxygenate it using an aeration wand. You don't need to do that. If you want to, I'd suggest it. It actually makes a more consistent and flavorful wine if you do those steps. But just using a spoon and stirring it to get the CO2 out, stirring it a little bit rough so some oxygen gets introduced, and then adding that 1 teaspoon of Fermento is very good. Because that's the 6th day for a white wine. It's the 3rd day for a red wine. On the 12th day, assuming it hasn't finished by then, which is temperature based, the warmer it is, the quicker it's going to finish, you're going to add a half teaspoon of Fermento. If it looks like it's about done, you can skip that, because again, that's temperature based. The cooler it is, the slower it's going to ferment. So right now our fermentation room is 65 degrees because of a problem with AC, and all of our white wines are completing faster than they should.
But they're turning out good. They taste good.
They're turning out fine, but my point is, if on the 12th day it looks like there's still some legs, if it still seems like it's fermenting, you can check the specific gravity, see if it's still dropping, then add a half teaspoon of Fermento to get it across the finish line. As soon as 1.06 or higher, I would probably add that Fermento to try to get it lower than 1.000. So
It's also a good idea. I know a lot of people don't have an oxygenation wand. It's a good idea to every day just take this out and swirl this
you
around.
can leave that in there and swirl it too.
Oh, well, I take it out and then I swirl it like 50 times. But that helps introduce oxygen into it as well.
Yeah, taking that out is a better idea, because otherwise you might not be getting any oxygen through the tube. My objection has been
Thank you.
withdrawn.
Thank you, counselor.
So we'll be back when this is
Ready
done,
to be racked.
and we'll show you how to rack it. Okay, it's about 2 weeks later, and it's done. The final gravity was 0.998. I took that 3 days in a row, and it didn't change, and it wasn't really bubbling, so I knew it was done. That's the only way you could know it's done, is that 3 days in a row you have the same specific gravity. So that gives us an ABV of
Using our handy dandy
our
tools.
tool at craftywiners.com/tool, and this is called the Calculate ABV tool.
Which method are we using tonight?
Complex.
Okay, complex. It is. That gives us a 12.53 ABV.
Good.
That's actually what we wanted.
That's right. It's because it only dropped a little bit more than 1.000.
Yeah.
So. Cool.
Well, okay, it's close to what we wanted. We wanted 11.5, but one
You don't
extra
have-
percent.
There is a way to control how dry it goes, and that would be by pasteurizing it when it got to the gravity that you wanted it to be at. So if you
That's
wanted
true.
to go to exactly 1.000, watch it very closely. When it gets to that, pasteurize it. There is no other way of controlling that. You can throw it in the fridge and slow it way down, but as soon as it warms up again, it may very well start fermenting again. So as long as there's sugar there, and at 1.000, it's arguable that there really isn't any sugar left, but
No.
That's just that there's more alcohol than water if you took the same sample. There still can be sugar in it, even though it's below 1.000. So, okay, so we're going to rack this, which means transfer it from the primary fermenter to a secondary vessel. We're not doing any other fermenting on it, so I'm not going to call it a secondary fermenter, but that's kind of what it is.
You just like saying vessel.
Vessel. Makes me feel like a ship captain.
Ahoy, mate!
Aye, aye.
And the corgis are hoping that some of this gets dropped because they like wine.
They're kind of lushes.
They almost like it as much as we do.
We don't really feed our corgis wine
My
for
goal-
all you people judging us right now.
My goal is to not get any of this lease, but I just got a little. There's a cap that can go on the end of these auto siphons that gives it half an inch of a raise above the lease, but I've got that cap off.
That's because we sanitized it and forgot to put it back on.
Yeah, everything has been sanitized. I think we said that earlier. Just in case. No, I actually take it off because I've been racking into carbonators. And the vessels that I've been racking out of don't have any lease, so I don't want the cap on there. It's actually, I think, better to not use the cap. You just have to be more careful to not let it get into the lease and suck it up.
When two people are doing it, it's fine. If you're doing it by yourself, that cap is very helpful.
So I tip this at the very end to make sure that the cap of this stays in the wine because it can be hard to restart if it stops.
Yes, it can.
I'm going to clear all this stuff out of the way and we'll continue. So, as I think we said earlier, it was a couple weeks ago, so I don't remember. Neither of us are real big fans of this variety of wine. I'm not really a white wine person to start with. She is, but she doesn't necessarily care for this one. So we're going to do something with it probably to make it taste better to us. If you like Pinot Grigio, then, do it however you want to do it. But if you weren't going to back sweeten it, you don't have to use the two potassiums, metabisulfite and sorbate. We probably are going to back sweeten it.
Yeah.
So we are going to add that. If you are not going to back sweeten it, you can skip those. Especially if you're going to be drinking it sometime soon and have control over the conditions. But you do use these because you don't want a new fermentation to start. And if there's any sugar there, there's a chance that it will start back up again.
Usually what we use for back sweetening, though, is non-fermentable sugar.
Right, but
the allulose.
She's been putting fruit in white wines. We did a video a couple of weeks ago, last week maybe, where she put fruit into a Riesling, and she kind of liked
It was really good.
the idea of doing that on this one too. So that does have sugar that will ferment if you put fruit in it.
Yes,
so
it will.
I generally say if you don't know for sure you're not going to back sweeten it, go ahead and put the potassiums in. They're not
It's not going to
they're
hurt
not
anything.
great for the human body probably, but they're not terrible either. So they're just about anything that you eat. If you didn't make it yourself and intentionally omit these, probably some of this is in almost everything that you eat that's a commercial product.
Surprise! So, I am going to put in the chiasosol first. It's 1/8 teaspoon.
And chiasosol is negatively charged and attracts positive particles out of the wine. Chitosan is its complement, and it grabs the positive charged particles. If you put them both in at the same time, they can counteract each other.
Are you positive about that?
And positive. So we give the chiasosol an hour to work. But we're going to tell you the truth. We're not going to give it a full hour tonight because we're recording. So you should give it an hour to work. We're going to give it maybe 10 minutes before we add the chitosan. But after you put the chiasosol in, stir it up gently. Earlier in the video, you were wanting oxygen in the wine must. Now that it's fermented, you do not want oxygen. It'll can damage it. It can make it taste bad. It can make it look bad. So be very careful when you stir. And watch headroom. You see that this is filled to the lip of
Which
the
is
jar,
good.
and that's exactly where we want it. So
While we let this sit, I'm going to mix up the rest of these ingredients.
that's the 15 minutes or so that
Yeah.
it's going to sit, because she's going to be mixing these other ingredients.
And I
up.
won't spit out all the measurements for everything. We'll put them up on the screen
I'll put
because
them up in a list.
there's too much to remember for you guys.
All of these chemicals, ingredients, they're all optional, but they all have valuable uses, and I will tell you those right now while she's mixing. As I said before, the potassium sorbate and metabisulfite are to keep a new fermentation from starting. They won't end one that is in progress, so don't try to use them that way. But they will inhibit yeast from starting to work again and multiplying again when new sugar is added. Chitosan and chiasosol, as I said, are clearing agents. They will get this a lot clearer than it is now. It's not actually terrible, but and bentonite does the same. It's a clay that attracts particles and then sinks to the bottom.
And also, notoriously, sticks to the bottom of this bowl, too.
So we took out about a quarter cup of this. Doesn't matter if it's before or after the chiasosol necessarily. And put it in here. She's mixing all these up. And then we will wait till the end of our 1 hour and put it in here and mix it in. So all the ingredients are in there. I'm gently stirring. And she's still thinking about whether or not she's going to add fruit. If you're going to add fruit, wait until the potassium metabisulfite and the potassium sorbate have been in here for 24 hours before you add fruit or add fermentable sugar. So we won't do anything on this tonight.
Typically, Pinot Grigios, I don't think are usually back sweetened, but I did have a Sutter Home, God forbid, Sutter Home Pinot Grigio.
Why?
Well, okay, it was the only option. I was getting my hair done, and they have these little bottles of wine.
It's free.
Yeah, it was free.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
Say-
if you consider
no more.
$200 for your hair free, but
Expensive one.
but it actually had kind of a fruity flavor to. I think they did back sweeten that one, so it can be done. It just probably isn't the norm.
So again, do it however you want. We are probably going to add fruit most likely to this tomorrow. We have tea infusers that I'll link in the description below that will fit enough fruit to
Quite a bit of fruit.
make it so that this is going to have a good fruit flavor in about 6 days. That's what it did with Riesling. That's what it's done with others.
Might try pineapple.
That might be good.
Yeah.
Checking the pH is something that we would normally do if we were going to bottle this. I don't think this is going to make it to the bottle. We'll give it away. You want your pH to be between
3.1 and 3.3 typically for white wines.
right. We're not going to worry much about that unless you want to. If we put fruit in here and if we
It's gonna
back sweeten
change
it,
it
it's going
anyway.
to change it. So I don't think on this video we're going to do it. If you want to know more about pH, follow the link and you can learn more about pH. Actually, I might have linked it in the first half of this, which means I can't link it again. So look up on our video list, search for the video about pH management. But yeah, for white wine, you want it to be probably lower than it is if you're going to bottle it. That's for shelf stability.
And keeping it bottled. Because there's one thing about this wine. You always drink it young. There's no benefit to aging a Pinot Grigio. In fact, it can actually develop some weird flavors if you do.
Okay, well, yeah. So we're not going to worry about the pH for sure on this video. And I think we did on this talk about TA, total acidity. So that is actually going to be a little more important to measure. If you're a professional winemaker, that's probably one of your more important ones because you're trying to get the tartness that the consumer is going to expect. But we're not going to I'm not going to worry about that. If you wanted this to be pineapple-y, you could use citric acid, but tartaric acid is what you typically are going to use in any wine
Yeah.
and over anything else.
Citric acid will give it definitely more of a lemony and a tart lemon.
And you can ruin a wine really quickly by overusing citric
Yeah.
or malic.
So we like tartaric acid usually.
I will use our food saver to suck out any CO2 in this. Probably later this evening, off camera. I want to get all the CO2 out by the time this is potentially bottled. But we try to keep our videos short, and because we're doing all the steps in one video other than bottling, you can watch our bottling video to see how to bottle, because it's the same regardless of the wine. But we're trying to keep these short, so I haven't been putting in showing the food saver step. It's not important unless you're trying to bottle quickly, because the CO2 will naturally come out over time.
Yeah.
So you can totally skip the food saver degassing, and you could just use a spoon to degas as well to try to hurry it along. But otherwise, letting this sit with an airlock for a month or so will take most of that CO2 out.
And if we put fruit in there, we may be letting it sit for quite a bit longer.
All right. So we're not doing the degassing tonight, but that is important. Again, it's critical that you have all the CO2 out before you bottle. So if you need to use a food saver or something like that to get the gas out, otherwise time will do it, or you can spend a lot of time stirring it and get it out that way. And you can tell by whether or not it foams up when you stir it. And you can obviously tell by tasting it, which we didn't do. Did we want to take a quick taste?
Oh yeah, we didn't. What the heck? Well, you know what? It's actually pretty good. But I think if we were to mess with the pH, it would alter that flavor that's in there.
Well, I don't think it's very good compared to what we're drinking. But.
Oh, I mean, compared to Pinot Grigios I have had commercially, it is not as, it doesn't have as much of a bite, which I like. And some people...
If we got the pH down to the 3.1 range for white wines, it would have a bite.
Yeah.
So doing it this way, you have control over whether or not it's going to be too acidic, right?
Yeah, because we are the consumer.
If you don't want it to be too acidic, just make it yourself.
Yep.
But I think any white wine would be good with fruit flavor added.
Absolutely.
Infused. So I'll drink it that way. I'll drink the Riesling we made too.
It's yummy.
So I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for watching our video on Pinot Grigio. If you make it yourself, please leave comments and tell us how you liked it and what went well for you, and maybe you did something different than what we did. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much for your support. We appreciate it. Until next time, cheers.